no goal is not enough.
Okay, so after we activated all of those, as I said before, what this means when it's dashed is because the aircraft is taking control on that, basically. So if we have this dashed, means that the auto throttle is taking charge of it. If we have the hedge selector dashed, means that we are following the route that we set up in the MCDU. And if we have the vertical speed dashed, also means that the aircraft is actually taking control of that, right? So in case we just want to move the hedge, we just have to scroll this, and it's going to stop looking like dashed, and it's just going to show a number. So if you press, that's going to appear, or that's going to change here with a big green line. So when that happens, you are basically going to know that you are controlling the edge of the aircraft. Right now I'm not going to move it because we want to follow our flight plan, but I'm just telling you guys that for you guys to know it. So we have also reached our transition altitude right now, so I'm going to set up our cruising altitude. That's 27,000 feet, and we're going to continue our climb right now. So the after takeoff checklist, sorry, we should make sure that our APU bleed is off. It is. APU master should be as required. In this case, we don't need the APU. Anti-ice protection also as required. We don't need anti-ice, as I said before. Seatbelts are right now active. The barometric reference now should be in standard mode. As you guys can see here, we have something that's trying to advise us or tells us that we still have the QNH in 1013. So what we do is we right click it, and then it's going to change to standard, and here we are already standard. It should be in standard during flight, and before landing we're going to put again the QNH right there. Great. So basically we are just continue our climb, and when we reach 10,000 feet we can put our landing lights off, and we can set the cruising altitude, but that usually is done in the transition altitude also, so that's why we already have 27,000 feet here, and we already passed 10,000, so we just put all these landing lights off. There we go. Here I activated the terrain for you guys to see, because at the airport we were not able to see much terrain appearing here. So to explain it better, when you activate this, I'm going to actually put a little bit less or more transparent there so we can actually see better our route. But when you actually activate this, that's because that's when you are able to see the terrain, sorry. So each time you change range, as I just did, the terrain is going to reload, and each time you change range you're going to see the terrain. So if it's green, it's because ground is actually far away. Here we can see we're in a flat area, so that's why it's green. Also, if we look up to our right, we can see it's actually a flat terrain, so it's normal for it to be green. In case we have some mountains ahead or something, then we would be able to see here some terrain, but that's not the case, so that's why we don't see anything. Actually, I can just turn this thing off. We could just turn it back home if we wanted for landing, but I think it's not necessary right now. So yeah, we're doing a nice climb at this moment. As I showed you guys, if you just click here, you can just change the range of the nav display here. Here we can see that we are away around 200 nautical miles away from Frankfurt. So this is not a very long flight, but it's a good flight to actually explain how this Airbus works, right? nice. As you guys can see here, we have a little blue arrow there, right? I'm just going to maybe zoom in a little bit so you guys can see better. Here we have a blue arrow, and what this blue arrow means actually is that at this point of the flight plane or of the route, we are actually going to reach our cruising altitude. So each time we actually set a new altitude, it doesn't matter if it's to descend or to climb, we are actually going to see an arrow here, and this arrow actually is going to show or indicate at which point or at which section of our flight plane we're actually going to reach the altitude that's here, right? Of course, this changes depending to the vertical speed here. Right now we have a vertical speed of 2,500 feet per minute, and that basically means that with this vertical speed we're going to reach this altitude at this section of our route. Easy, right? So if we had a bigger vertical speed, let's say 6,000, we would be able to see this maybe closer, you know. We would actually reach that cruising altitude in less time or in less distance, to say it in another way, right? And yeah, that's basically what it means. These little numbers here are the range. So right now here I'm using an 80 nautical mile range for the display, so that basically is going to show that here what's here between this circle, it's at 40, what's here between this circle or this ratio is 60, and of course the outer membrane of it's going to mean 80, because we are actually working with an 80 nautical mile range, right? Not so hard, works quite nice actually. Maybe you guys are going to hear something in the background. That means that's because I am using the speakers of the computer, but that works okay. Great. Well, I guess that there's not much more to say here. We're just climbing, and we are like in a pre-cruise stage of the flight. Sorry. So there's not much more to see. We can monitor the ECAM displays if we want to. We can check the systems. We can just check that everything is correct. But in this case, we're just fine. There's not much more to do right now. We just have to check that everything is good. We just have to check that we are actually following a route, because this stage of the flight is similar to the cruise itself. Like, we're just climbing to the cruise altitude, and what we're going to be doing right now, and in the cruise stage, is just monitor flight systems, right? So pilots in real life would basically at this stage just review the ECAM right here. So as you guys can see, this ECAM here is basically always going to stay showing us the engines and the engine data. Here we can see what we just selected. We are actually in the wheel page, and it's normal that we are not seeing nothing because the landing trace is just retracted, but we can still see the brake temperature, and of course, because we are at a high altitude, the brakes are already freezing down there, right? And here pilots would usually just switch between these pages, checking that everything is properly functioning as it should, right? there's not much more to say. Actually, of course, we have everything properly working right now. APU shows like this because APU is not working. This is the cabin temperatures, this are the doors, wheels, flight controls. Let's just leave it in flight controls right there. And that's it. There's not much more to say. Usually pilots at this stage of the flight also have a friendly chat about their lives, about the airline, new fleet coming, new destinations, new routes, family. There's not much more to do at this stage. Just make sure that everything is running properly right now. So I'm just going to maybe use this time to explain some things, and then we're just going to have a little cut, and we're going to be back again at the landing. Maybe I'm going to break this video in several parts so that it does not appear so long for you guys and you guys get bored. Maybe I'm just going to put it in 3 different videos: aircraft configuration, departure, climb and cruise, and maybe descent and landing, right? So now that we're on the climb stage of the flight, I'm just going to explain a few things. So these things here are not functional, we don't see them working, but basically this is used for transferring company messages, right? So if the airline has sent a message to the pilot, you would actually see it up there, or you could print it here or anything. I'm not sure how that properly works, but yeah, that's used for that. Actually here we can see there's some sort of paper here, so I'm not pretty sure how this works, but anyways, that's how it works, right? And that's it. This cabin is actually beautiful, I have to say. This aircraft is really, really amazing. And we have several views here. So if we want to see the first officer's view, we can actually switch it to here. This is also the autopilot panel. Or if you want to change to major views in FSX, in my case, you just simply right click and you're gonna have several options here. So in the cockpit we have really cool views actually that Aerosoft has put, right? So there's one that's flight deck. I'm just gonna look for it. Upper deck. Oh no, this is another one. Flight deck, here we go. And here we have a really nice view of the whole cockpit of the A320. It's really nice, built by Aerosoft. It works really, really good. Don't press this. Don't ask, but basically never ever do this during flight. Basically that's going to open the window. I'm not sure what happens. Well, in real life, of course, that's obvious. What happens is that the cabin is going to lose this pressure. I don't know, maybe the airplane could lose control. I really don't know what will happen. I don't want to imagine it. But basically what this does is opening the window, which is also really cool, but I don't recommend doing that during flight. Aerosoft is a really realistic aircraft, so maybe if you open this window in a default aircraft, nothing will happen, but I really don't know what actually happens if I do it. But I'm not going to try right now because we're in the middle of a tutorial. Anyways. Great, so welcome back guys. Here we are now at 60 days. We are at 60 nautical miles of beginning our descent. So I'm going to explain from now so we don't like miss anything, right? Like we understand easier and we explain better, right? So first of all, if you guys wanted to, you could have put here the simple sign in auto. That's so that people can go to the bathroom, you know, like during the flight. Especially now that we have a really beautiful day, so there's no need of that. There's a city down there. I'm not sure what city is it. Maybe it's Berlin, maybe it's not. I really don't know. I'm not very familiar with Germany. As I said before, I'm just choosing this flight because it's a short flight, it's not an international flight, and it's good to make a tutorial, right? Simple. Okay. So, if you guys remember, I explained before what these arrows meant, right? So before we had an arrow that was like a blue arrow that was pointing a certain area of our route. Basically that arrow shows at what point of the route we're actually going to reach our cruising altitude, right? That's the one that we are actually holding right now. So this arrow, if you guys observe, you guys are going to notice that this arrow is not actually pointing into the route. It's actually like starting from the route and like going outside, right? I don't know how to explain it, but yeah, basically there's an arrow here. So what happens is that at this point we should be starting our descent or starting our approach, right? The Aerosoft checklist, the Airbus checklist, says that the correct positioning for our arrival should be try to be at 9,000 feet above terrain when we are 30 nautical miles away from our touchdown down, right? So let's say like when we are approaching this area or like in this waypoint, we should be maximum at 9,000 feet, right? However, to do a good approach, to do a smooth descent, which is what we want to, we would start our approach here with the arrow, right? We have some traffic there because it's showing some traffic. So how are we going to start our approach? I'm going to show you here really quick. On our MCDU here, we have something here, an option that says activate approach phase. So once we're ready to start our approach, basically, when we click this, there's going to be a confirm button. I'm not going to do it because I don't want to accidentally then hit this thing twice and then it's going to start our approach and we are not ready to start our approach. We're still cruising. But when we are going to press this, you guys are going to see it in a moment when we start approaching to Frankfurt. But what's going to happen is when I select this, there's going to be a confirmation asking you to press that same button again to confirm that you want to start your approach. So we are going to press that again, and basically what's going to happen is that the aircraft is going to begin slowing down itself so we can properly reduce some altitude, right? That's what's going to happen. So if we were flying with VATSIM right now or with any ATC, we should be holding the altitude that they actually tell us to hold, right? But as we are not flying with VATSIM, when we arrive to this arrow, or maybe before, we're just going to put some altitude between 10 and 15,000 first to hold, and then we're going to do an approach briefing. We're going to prepare the cabin for our final approach, and then that's the point where we're actually going to put our transition altitude. In this case, I have the charts open in my iPad, and it says that the transition for our star, it's actually some point between 5,000 feet and 6,000 feet. I think that 5,000 feet actually, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to descend to 12,000 feet or 9,000 feet, and we're going to prepare for the final approach. And once we're ready, we're just going to put ourselves in 5,000 feet, and we're going to start reducing altitude to get to the optimum altitude. We need to intercept the localizer and then make an ILS landing, which I'm also going to indicate you how to do it in some moments, right? So once you begin to approach to your airport, especially when you come from international flights, it's normal that in really long flights you have the range in 320 nautical miles, right? Here you can see that we have a really kind of pink looking here, right? This is because we have selected the airport, and this is showing the airports in the area, right? or at least until 160 nautical miles. So this is in black yet, right? So if you come from international flights or really long flights, what you want is to see where you're flying, right? You don't want to miss what you're doing, so what you have to do is reduce some range. In our case, we were maintaining an 80 nautical mile range, so we can now put it in a 41, so that we better have a better view of what's going on, right? I have not mentioned it before, but in case you don't know, this actually changes the information that we have displayed here. So here, as you can see, we have something that says ARPT, which displays the airports, right? If we change it, we can see different aspects here. We can see borders, we can see waypoints. Here we have all the waypoints. Actually, I don't know what this is for. Not pretty sure. Excuse me for that, but it shows something here as well. And this is the constraints. So basically here, what we're going to see is the constraints altitude for our arrival, right? Here we don't see anything displayed because that's for the final waypoints before we arrive to Frankfurt, but that basically shows the constraints that we have in different areas before arriving to the airport, right? Because we have to take into account that if we're going to land in a city, especially in a big one, there's people living outside, so there are some constrictions that we actually have to follow. Oh, there's another aircraft right there. What a nice view. There is another aircraft cruising really quick. It just went out there, it just vanished. I'm really not sure what that aircraft is. Maybe an A330, I don't know. As we are moving and she's moving also, it goes too fast, but I think it's an A320. We don't even see the airline because we are actually moving fast. Okay, so let's go back to our stuff. Let's concentrate, let's focus. And right now we have arrived to our star. So I'm not going to actually wait we arrive to the arrow, I'm just going to do it right now. What I was talking before, what we're going to do here is we're going to press activate approach phase, and here we have the option to confirm, so we confirm. And there you guys are going to see that we're actually going to start slowing down to something called the green dot speed. So the green dot speed basically is the initial speed for our initial approach, right? The more we approach, the more that we are actually going to begin to reduce our altitude. I don't know why, but we kind of move more to right than what we actually should do, but anyways. So this is actually going to begin reducing speed and it's going to arrive to something called the green dot speed, right? As I was explaining you guys. And this is going to be the speed for our initial approach, and from that green dot speed we're actually going to reduce our speed more and more depending on the flaps that we apply to the aircraft. So if we put flaps 1, okay, right now as I said before, we should use our speed to maybe 10,000 feet, and we are actually going to have a smooth descent. As you guys can see, we have a descent less than 1,000 feet per minute. So if you guys want to change your vertical speed, what you're going to do is just you're going to click here and then you're actually going to reduce it. So I'm going to put a proper speed, maybe to 1,900 feet is okay. We can set that up and then we're going to begin descending at the vertical speed that we actually ordered the aircraft to, right? Also, we can reduce the range even more to see our turn, and here we see that we are actually beginning to reduce our speed, right, to make our initial approach. We are also approaching here to something that's called the green dot speed. I think I have said that 3 times because I have realized 3 times anyway. And when we reach 10,000 feet, we can actually put some lights to come in. So right now we are descending really smooth, but we can turn back on the seatbelt signs. It's okay that if you put them off, you just leave them in note in case you forget to put them back on, at least in real life, so that you have any accident back there with someone who was standing and then just lost the equilibrium right now. Okay, so as you guys can see here, we have moved a little bit outside of the route. That's okay, because that was a really sharp turn, right? So sometimes when it's a very sharp turn, the nav display actually deploys or shows or converts that sharp turn into a parabola, right, to show a smooth turn. But here it didn't, so that's why we actually appeared a little bit off from our route, and I'm going to take advantage of that to explain you guys what this means. This is actually the distance that we are away from our planned route, right? So as you guys can see here, we have 1.2, which means that we are 1.2 nautical miles off course, or we have this a deviation from our route from, or corresponding to 0.9 nautical miles right now. So once we approach back to our route, this is going to disappear, which is going to mean that we are back on course. Great, so we are descending correctly. Right there we can actually see Frankfurt. That's the airport, I guess, and we have a nice view here. We're going to squeeze and put a little bit more descent there, descent rate, sorry. There we go. Great, so what I was explaining before was the constraints or constrictions. So if I have it here, we can just see the airports. Here we can see we actually have EDDF, but when I put here constraints, basically we have the constraints altitude, right? So if you guys can see, we can now see some pink numbers or purple numbers here, and that basically shows us which are the minimum altitudes or the appropriate altitudes we should be holding. So if it says, or if it has an addition symbol before, it means that we should be at 764 feet above the ground or more, right? We should hold this altitude or be above, sorry. Never mind, this value is not from our route, it's from the go around route, in case we actually go around. So if you guys want to go around tutorial, just put that below in the comments and we actually are going to the go around tutorial. But the ones that are actually from our route are these ones up here. So this means that at this waypoint we should be at 4,000 feet. Here we cannot see what it says because EDDF, it's actually blocking the side, but it should be somewhere between 1,500 feet maybe, which is the actual point where we should quote that altitude, be at that altitude, right? So right now we're at 18,000 feet, we're properly descending. Not much to say about, and that's the airport, right? This is the city and there's the airport, or that should be the airport right now. It's already in sight. Yeah, so we're actually doing good right now. There's another thing maybe you guys would like to know, and there's the possibility that we get here a symbol or something that says more drag. What that basically means is that we actually need to reduce a little bit the speed, or the aircraft needs us to help reducing the speed basically. So as you guys can see, when we have vertical speed that's greater than 1,500 feet maybe negative, the aircraft is not going to hold the green dot speed, not mattering or not caring about the thrust is in idle. Basically this is because it makes sense. We have our nose a little bit moved towards the floor, so it makes sense that as we have a descending rate, the speed is higher because we are descending, right? So in case this is actually going too high, right now I'm not going to apply that because we are actually still less than 280 knots, which is good. But in case this goes to 300 knots or something when you're descending, we don't want that, right? Because we're approaching already. So the way you fix that is you simply pull the speed brakes out, right? And that's actually going to help you brake the aircraft. As you can see, I pulled the speed brakes, I deployed the speed brakes, and we are actually now reducing the airspeed properly, right? That's the way how you solve if you want to reduce your speed. Actually, when the aircraft needs that help, it's going to appear here something that says more drag. In my case, there was not any advice here, and that's because the airspeed was not increasing rapidly increasing, right? It was increasing but slowly, so there was still time to descend properly without overspeeding and then reaching the winded speed once we are in the level that we actually want. However, I just applied the speed brakes, and as you guys can see, we can actually help the aircraft properly brake, or reduce the airspeed, not brake, reduce. We're now parallel to the airport right now, and don't worry if this is extended too much. I mean, I know here it says full, but it actually is going to be controlled by the aircraft, right? So you just need to pull them completely, and the aircraft is going to actually deploy the necessary amount of speed brakes to brake properly. So it's automatic, like they're not going to be fully extended. So we're almost getting to our leveled altitude, so we can set now here the QNH. So basically we'd head to the 80s in Frankfurt to set the proper QNH, or we could just put 1030, which is standard QNH, right? That's good there. And the temperature in Frankfurt, I'm not really sure. This basically is determined by the 80s, but we're just going to put any altitude. Let's pretend we're in summer. We have 29 degrees up there. There we go. And now here we're at 10,000 feet. So what we could do right now is to, okay, here it says that the speed brakes are up, and yeah, actually we're almost approaching the winded speed, so we can retract them one. Again, right. So now we are at 10,000 feet. We can prepare ourselves for the last descent. We can actually put landing lights out. We can deploy them, but we don't still need to turn them on. Yeah, actually we're going to turn them on, sorry. Now that I have hesitated, we actually have to turn them on, so we're going to turn them on. Cabin sides, we should have here a seatbelt sign on, we actually do. Smoking side should have always been on since we board the aircraft. Engine mode selector should be as required. If we have some difficult descending, we would have put them, but we are fine. And these lights are going to be deployed, but after we are aligned with the runway, right? Anyways, so right now we have reached our winded speed, and we can begin reducing some more speed. So after we make our left turn, I'm actually going to put some flaps, so we can still reduce our descending rate right now if we would wanted to, or if we were landing in a really mountain zone, or a really in a mountain area, sorry, then we would just apply here or click here, and we would have the terrain there, right? I'm just going to leave it on, but here it's not that necessary. All this is flat, but if we were landing maybe in Las Vegas, maybe somewhere in the Alps, somewhere, any place that has mountains surrounding the airport, you just would put that to make sure that you are not going to hit any mountain, right? Great. Engine mode selector should be normal, as I was saying. You would put it in ignition in case there was a turbulence to land with any problem with those engines, but we can just leave it normal here. We should have in right now the ILS frequencies set. We actually do, that's good, and it happens automatically, so there's not much more to say, right? Now we're actually turning, we are holding 7,000 feet, and the next altitude that we're actually going to set it's 4,000, because here the constraint says that we actually have to hold 4,000 when we arrive to that waypoint, right? That's good. As you guys can see now, we are within 20 nautical miles from the touchdown, so at this point we should have been already at least in 9,000 feet, right? I'm just going to put this in 4,000, and we're going to begin descending to 4,000 feet, which is the altitude that we should hold in Robsa, which is the next waypoint. Alright, that's good. We're actually maintaining a good descent rate. Right now we can also adjust the auto brake. For Frankfurt low it's fine. It's a really big airport. It has big runways, large runways, long runways, so we can just leave it on, right? In case we were going to land in a short runway, we would just put in medium to brake faster, but that's not necessary right now. If we also would anticipate to the landing, in case we knew that the runway is really small, we would not also put medium, but maybe the brake fan to prevent the brakes from overheating. However, as I have said a couple of times, we don't need that in Frankfurt because it's actually a big airport, right? So it's going to be fine. Alright, so we are almost approaching to 5,000 feet right now. The spoilers are retracted still, but we are going to arm them in a minute. Flaps are still out. We're also going to apply some flaps in a moment. Sorry. Auto throttle is active. Autopilot is active, working. So I'm going to quickly explain some things. Okay, here we see that this is shining, which means that we should already change our barometric reference back to 1030, the standard one, for our approach or descent. And now we're leveling to 4,000 feet. So we're going to stay at 4,000 feet when we make our turn, and then we're going to descend to 1,590 feet, which is going to be the altitude, the next altitude. So I'm going to set it up here, 1,590 feet. There we go. That's also going to be our go around altitude, I guess. In case we have to go around, then we are going to hold that altitude till we go back to the transition altitude and we begin the reapproach again. I say that because that's how it would work in real life. However, we are not going around this time, or at least it's not what I have intended. Let's hope it's not needed. Here we have another runway, or another small airport, maybe private airport, and Frankfurt should be there, right? We're approaching properly right now. So we're about to make the last turn, and once we are already aligned with the runway, we can begin setting flaps, and we can actually set the lights, external lights for our approach. So I'm going to explain some things right now so we can actually do them and we don't lose or miss anything. So for our final approach, after realigning ourselves with the runway, when we reach 2,500 feet, we're actually going to put the landing gear leveler down. We're actually going to arm the speed brakes. Auto brake is already set, so it's fine, and we're going to set the external lights. We're going to turn all these on, right? So once we are at the proper altitude, we are going to intercept the localizer, and after we intercept the localizer, what we want is going to activate the approach button, right? So what that's going to do is that the aircraft is going to maintain the glide slope. It's going to align with the glide slope, which is and with localizer, right? we're going to intercept the glide slope and the localizer, which are going to maintain us aligned with the runway and also at the proper altitude for a landing, right? To make an ILS or instrumental landing right? Instrumental landing, sorry. ILS is the complete name of the system, right? So we're actually now aligning with the runway. As I said before, we're going to apply some flaps. Once we activate the approach, we're also going to activate the autopilot 2. That's what you actually do in real life. In case autopilot 1 fails, then autopilot 2 is going to take you in charge the approach. And we are being advised that there's some traffic. There we go, so we can now anticipate. We're going to put flaps 1. Let's put flaps 2, there we go. Great, so we are ready for landing right now. We're going to hold 1,500 feet, as I said before.
2,500.
Climb.
Alright, and now we can put the landing gear down, as I said.
2,500.
Because we're at 2,500. We can also apply some flaps, but we're going to wait a minute. Okay, there's traffic really close to us, but we are not flying with ATC, so that's not a surprise, right? There's no problem with that.
Climb now.
That's the ground proximity warning system advising that we should climb. Anyways, we're good. Now we can put the range in 10. We can activate landing system also. There's an aircraft approaching to the runway. I don't know if it's the same runway we're going to take, but as I said before,
Descent now. Traffic.
and now we're about to reach 1,500, right? We're a little low, but that's okay. We're going to intercept the localizer in a minute. This aircraft actually is oh, that's nice. This aircraft is actually going to runway 07 left, which means that we actually might have a parallel landing. So I'm going to put here flaps 3, and we're instantly going to put flaps 4. We're going to arm the speed brakes right now. We're going to set the lights, and everything is ready to our final, right?
Descent.
Okay, so if you guys notice, we are receiving many warnings, but that's okay. That's because the TCAS system. Right now we have intercepted this, so I'm going to activate the approach, and the autopilot 2 is also going to be on, and we're going to start an ILS landing right now. So, as oh my god, this is not going to let me talk. Yeah, those systems are actually warning us that there's traffic. That's the TCAS working, but that's because, as I said before, we are not using ATC, so that might happen. There's traffic approaching Frankfurt. Frankfurt is a busy airport, and the TCAS is actually telling us to do something because we're about to hit another aircraft, but that's okay. We are not using ATC. So 1,000 check. We are good now to land. Everything is ready, and for the touchdown, when we hear the retard call, we're actually going to put our throttle in idle. It's actually inclined, which means it's the outer throttle is operating. We can move this to landing system also. There we see we're good. And once we hear the retard call, we're going to put the throttle in idle, and we're going to perform the flare, or the autopilot is going to perform the flare, right? If we would be doing a manual landing right now, we would perform the flare, but I'm not going to do it because I'm teaching you guys how to land with ILS, right? So we have 500 feet right now, we're good.
400.
Auto brakes, so we're going to do a last check of everything. We actually have speed brakes arm, auto brakes in low, lights are okay.
100.
And here we are at Frankfurt Airport. It's beautiful.
100. 70, 60, 50, 40, 30, 20. Retard.
Okay, retard. Now we put our throttle to idle. We just landed, and now we're going to put a little bit of reverse there. Here we have some reverse applied, so this begin to brake. If there was actually an aircraft in front of us, that's the reason why. Now we put back some speed because we are at 50 knots, and we can actually turn off the autopilot right now. There we go. And we have landed successfully, safely. Now we have to exit the runway as soon as possible, also taking into account that we are at Frankfurt, right? I don't know why my world of A textures are not loading, so traffic is actually shown like that, but okay, it's okay, I'll fix it later. That's why we see the aircraft in front white. So after we cross this holding runway point here, I'm going to brake a little bit here to say some things. So here we have to check the wheel. Brake temperature is okay, we don't need the brake fan. Now we're going to do the after landing checklist. So after landing and after we exit the runway, ground spoilers should be back in retracted position. Flaps should be retracted as well. Ignition switch should be normal in case we just had putting it in ignition. Anti-ice should be off or on depending on the situation, basically. APU, we should start APU right now, so we're going to start APU. And we would stop the clock right now. Deactivate landing system, and we're going to put it back in arc nav right there. There we go. So we can continue our taxi now. We would have to leave the anti-ice, right? However, if we were, or if we had the anti-ice activated because temperature was cold in the sky, that might happen in fall or in any area of the world, that the sky is cold but the ground is not, then we would deactivate the anti-ice right now, right? We would deactivate it because we needed the anti-ice for landing, because at the high altitude it was cold, but right now it isn't. Great, so now we're approaching to Frankfurt, and I guess that we're just going to use the following gate at the next gate maybe. There we have some nice 737s right there. I'm just going to use this gate, B22, so we're going to turn here. And the Aerosoft Frankfurt has a really cool feature, and it's that we actually see where we have to stop. So I'm just going to slow down a little bit. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we stop. There we go. So right now we're going to turn off the engines. APU is on, so we're fine. The parking brake, we set parking brakes right now. We right now would establish contact with ground. So if you guys like, or in real life, we would establish contact with ground, but the simulator, if you guys have GSX, well, right now we would activate GSX, if not. So right now we would connect the external power. We don't have this available because engines are just turning off. They take their time, so we just wait for a second for them to complete this turn off. Seatbelt signs would be off right now, so we just turn off seatbelt signs. Beacon lights should be off. We turn off beacon light, and strobes, we should have done that when we exit the runway. Also, we should have done this when we exit the runway. So sorry for that, but basically remember to turn off these lights when you exit the runway. And if you're about to taxi to the gate, you just leave this in taxi. We just arrived, so we turn it off. This is stay on because there's people in the cockpit right now. The parking brakes are set. Okay, once we set the ground equipment, let me see if we can do that right now. Okay, we still can't. Oh, okay. Apparently I did not set the parking brake. I turned it off instead of on. There was a confusion because when I arrived to the gate, I actually with the keyboard turned it on, but then when I said parking brake set, I actually turned it off. But yeah, leave this on, and now we can actually access here too. So we are going to connect all of these, and once we connect them, we can actually turn off the parking brake right now. So we turn this off. There we go. Now we can have contact with ground clearance. So let's suppose that we are going to request the boarding. We request the boarding, and the clock was already stopped. As I said, it was not a really long flight. It almost took us an hour to come here. The anti-ice at this point would be on also if we would have been using it. That's not our case. We are now going to turn on the APU bleed so that we can maintain temperature. And the fuel pumps should be all on, so we're just going to turn the fuel pumps off right now. And that's it. Here we are actually in something called the turnaround state. When the after parking checklist is complete, the aircraft is in a state called turnaround state. So basically, if we were pilots right now, we would leave the aircraft at this point, and then the next crew would come in and they would prepare the aircraft for the next flight. If this would be the last flight in this aircraft's schedule, then probably a dispatcher from the airline would come, and he would be in charge of preparing the aircraft to leave it, right? Or if you are a private pilot and your boss is right now staying at that airport, then you would turn the aircraft, right? There are many possibilities right now, but that's a real life story right now. So what we can do right now is just like open some doors and leave the GSX do its work. So I'm just going to open these doors, and yeah, here we are. So just going to press Ctrl G so we can extend the jetway. This should be done before we open the main exit, right? But anyways, it doesn't matter, we're in a simulator right now. So here we just have a nice view of the Airbus, and we have a nice view of the ground of the GSX working. So thank you guys for everything. Thank you guys for watching this video. Hope that you like it. Remember that you can support the channel if you like aviation, especially if you like simulation. I'm going to be uploading more videos. Usually I upload some videos about realistic flights, so that's what I usually do. You can also see more tutorials. If you maybe want a tutorial from the 777 PMDG, just type it down below. If you want a tutorial from the Carenado, any Carenado aircraft, we can figure out what we do. And thanks for watching the video. I hope that you have liked, subscribe. Remember to subscribe if you liked the video. Remember to give me a like if you also like the video. And well, I hope we can see each other in the next one. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care, and as always, see you in the next flight.